Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. Good police officers deserve to work with other good police officers. That's something I've said before, and it's something I believe in. People say, oh, you're a criminal defense lawyer, you must just hate police, and that's not true. I'm critical of bad police officers, but there's a lot of officers out there who are doing good work and whose services are really important. They do dangerous work, but they also do things that are just difficult in other ways. They might be, for instance, called upon to respond to a car accident and end up having to console somebody who's just been in an accident whose spouse just died right next to them. That's the kind of thing that is going to tear at anybody. And so with that in mind, that good police officers deserve to work with other good police officers, I want to talk about something that's going on in Hamilton, Ontario. Right now, there are court proceedings where Constable Brandon Turdick is fighting for his job. He wants to continue to be a police officer, and he shouldn't. He originally pled guilty to a couple of firearm-related offenses relating to a couple of different instances. And now he says he's willing to take any particular penalty. He's willing to do anything so long as he can continue to be a cop. But being a police officer is a higher calling. It requires a higher standard of ethics. And let's talk about what exactly he agreed he did, because he pled guilty. Now, the first one is more minor, and this one was only discovered because of the more serious one. But he was in his car, he's dancing to music or something, and then he pulls out his gun and uses it as a prop. He's sort of pumping it in the air. That's not okay, right? That's careless. That's not something he should be doing, but it's also not the more serious of the offenses. If that was the only issue, then okay, fine. You know, he could have a path to being a police officer again. But let's talk about the more serious one, and you'll see why I started this off with good cops deserve to work with other good cops. Because this officer was in his locker room, and he discovers something is wrong with his gun. So he wants to unload it. And the thing about that is that unloading and fiddling with the gun should only be happening in the police station in very specific, there's protocols. You take it to an unloading station, you deal with things there. You don't just pull it out wherever and start fiddling with it. That's not allowed, that's not okay. But he does. He pulls out his gun and he unloads it. And another officer hears somebody fiddling with the gun. They hear the racking of the slide, all of those things. And they come to say, like, what the hell are you doing? What is going on? So that officer, who I'm not going to name, I've got his name, it's in reports, but this is a good cop. He doesn't deserve to sort of be dragged out there. Walks out there to say, hey, stop messing with your gun. What are you doing? And in response, Constable Turdick points the gun at him, pulls the trigger, and laughs. It's all a big joke. The good cop in this scenario is the guy who walks out there, says, what are you doing with your gun? Stop it. And has a gun pointed at his chest and the trigger pulled. So this officer, Constable Turdick, is now saying he wants to continue to be a police officer, notwithstanding the fact that, as I mentioned, he pled guilty to this, that he pointed a gun at a fellow officer and pulled the trigger. Now, I don't think I'm out of line. I don't think I'm sort of off base when I say that a person, any person, who has pulled a gun on a cop and pulled the trigger should never be a cop. This is the bottom basement level of qualifications to be a police officer is don't have pulled a gun and pulled the trigger at another police officer. The fact that I am needing to say this, like, until this became an actual court case, nobody would think that this was something that needed to be said. We would just say, oh, right, that's super obvious. You just, like, no kidding. Now, when he was convicted, Constable Turdick got a firearm prohibition. He was banned from having guns for 5 years. So he can't touch a gun even as a police officer. What he's asking to do is he wants to be a police officer that doesn't have any sort of power to use force on people. So he wouldn't be carrying weapons. He wouldn't be any of that. He'd be doing things by phone. And the problem with all of this is that he still shouldn't be there in any capacity. He said basically, well, you would accommodate me if I was disabled, or if I had a mental health concern, or if I was a pregnant officer, you would accommodate. But those are all like disabilities or, you know, temporary conditions or whatever else. I don't really see that our police force should have a duty to accommodate you being a criminal. I feel like criminals and cops should be two separate groups with zero overlap. This whole category of criminal cops is one we could lose. Like, we could miss that one. This is bizarre to me that this is even being considered, that this is not being, you know, that really the legislation allows for this at all. So the other thing I'll mention is that the criminal code in Canada actually contains provisions where if you have a firearm prohibition, like let's say Joe gets a firearm prohibition, and his roommate Bob has guns, the government can actually seek to ban Bob from having guns because his proximity to the first guy is potentially going to result in, you know, in the person with the original firearm prohibition having access to guns. Well, if we expand this to the police force, like if he's going into the police station and into the secured areas, now he's potentially around guns or other prohibited weapons, prohibited devices, things he's not allowed to have. So that seems like another reason why he should not, you know, shouldn't have this. The other thing is that eventually his firearm ban is going to wear off. And if he's a police officer and he's, you know, just handling phones and so forth, the instant his gun ban wears off, what do you think he's applying to do? He's going to apply to be back carrying a gun. And I don't want that. And you don't want that. The other thing, you know, I said good police officers deserve to work with other good police officers. There's a police officer in this story who had a gun pulled on him. And so what they're proposing here is that this guy becomes a cop. I mean, Hamilton, how many stations do they have? We've got the possibility that this officer is going to have to work with a person who pulled a gun on them. And I can tell you, if I'm an employer and somebody pulls like one of my employees pulls a gun on another of my employees, the guy who pulled the gun is not working for me under any circumstances anymore. There's just no possibility. That is such a ridiculous notion. And this is very frustrating. It annoys and it angers me that we're saying that this good cop now needs to work with the guy who pulled a gun on him. Come on. So, this hearing is, you know, this is all sort of in progress. This is going on, and I'll let you know. I'll let you know what's going on. But I am very hopeful that the result of this will be that no, Mr. Turdick does not get to be a police officer, because holy crap. So, and if you're wondering, you know, why does the public lose faith in the police? Well, if this officer continues to be an officer, how does the public have any faith in the police? Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Wanted to share that with you. This, a lot of the information was from some good reporting by the Hamilton Spectator. So I'm going to link that article in the description below. You can check that out. I think it's paywalled, but it's worth reading. So have a look at that. I also want to thank my Patreon supporters. At the $50 level, Canada's National Firearms Association, the CCFR, and the Canadian Shooting Sports Association, as well as Lembas for the Elf. And at the $20 level, Lindsay Metcalf, Larry Kalniak, Kyle Fox, Drunkle of the Baileys, Cameron Johnson, Andrew Elsich, Vicky, and Dorky Dane. Thank you as well to my $10 supporters who will be in the crawl immediately following. If you want to support me on Patreon, there's a link below. That's a great way to help keep this channel going. Help me achieve my eventual goal of doing YouTube primarily and then just law for free. That is the goal, is to just be a pro bono lawyer. So working on that. And yeah, thank you guys all, and see you next time.